Hi, I'm Allan Finney, and this is what Ayahuasca told me to tell you. There's two versions to this story in this video. The short version and the long version, and you can hang in for as long as you want on the long version. And this is also my contribution to the Thank You Plant Medicine movement, and I'll be posting this on February 20th, 2020, hopefully along with thousands of others. So here's the short version of the story. I spent 59 years of my life looking for something. And at that time, I couldn't tell you exactly what that was. I just knew I wasn't very happy about things. And there had to be more to this life than what I'd been experiencing. But a few months ago, thanks to ayahuasca, I actually got to put a name on this general dissatisfaction. And it's something called dissociative disorder. And that's when the pieces of the puzzle really fell into place. And, I'm not all that big on modern psychiatry or anything or pharmaceuticals, but sometimes it's just so useful to have a diagnosis. And dissociative disorder is really such a good description for it. So I'll dive into that in more detail a little later in this video. So anyway, I was 59 when I started taking ayahuasca, and it changed my life. I mean, it completely changed my life. And apparently that's what I had been looking for all those 59 long years. And I am eternally grateful. And when I say eternally grateful, I mean eternally, like lifetimes worth of gratitude. I'll tell people, or, it'll come up a conversation, I take ayahuasca, and some people are like, wow, I could never do that. I couldn't go through an ayahuasca ceremony, but really you can. Anybody can. I mean, you just sit there and you take a cup of tea. That's it. A little brew, and then after that, some crazy shit happens, and in a few hours you get up and you go home. Anybody can do that, really. And what I think, people are really saying when they say they couldn't take ayahuasca is that they don't want to face themselves in an ayahuasca ceremony. And I suppose that can be a little tough the first time or two, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then your life just gets better and better, and you're a better person for it. You want to talk about easy and hard. The hard part for me, for my life, was this day in and day out emotionally shut down existence without any relief in sight. And for me, that was that's the hard thing. If somebody gave me a choice, let's say between a life sentence or like 40 lashes or something, I'd take the 40 lashes, because that whole life sentence thing, that's just so long. It just goes on and on and on. So that's the hard part. Here's the easy part: going into an ayahuasca ceremony and taking a little cup of tea. And it can be intense, without a doubt, but it's over in a few hours. And, the really intense part of the ceremony doesn't last the whole ceremony. There's joy and beauty and laughter and teachings. Oh my God, the teachings. Nobody talks about that. Like, I haven't seen a lot about that, but the knowledge you get in a ceremony is worth the price of admission right there. And, that whole puking thing seems to be a big problem, but there again, it might last 10 minutes or so, and you might not even puke in the whole ceremony. It's just so overdone. All these hard parts, people make a big deal out of it. And it's not, once you do it, it isn't. But this is why I take ayahuasca. I finally found some hope. There's progress. You're finally moving someplace you want to be. The life sentence is over. You just got the get out of jail free card in Monopoly. We're all loving beautiful human beings. Everybody is, every one of us. And there is so much love and laughter and beauty in this world, but sometimes that just gets buried under layers of stuff. And that's what ayahuasca does. She just peels back the layers. And the only question is, how many layers do you want to peel back? And that's the beauty of this plant medicine. And it's just like anything. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And for me, it was that simple. Live how you're living, which in comparison wasn't really all that great. Or take some ayahuasca and change your life. And, you know, ayahuasca certainly isn't the only thing that can change your life, but it was exactly what I needed. And that's the short version of this story. So, you know, thank you, plant medicines, for changing my life. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. So, if you want to hear the whole dissociative disorder thing, here we go. And it takes a little explanation. I was raised by not one, but two alcoholics. My dad had been a gunnery sergeant in the Air Force, and he was just a hard man. My mother was also an alcoholic, and she was in and out of a mental hospital, you know, when I was growing up. There were 5 boys in my family, no girls, and I was the third child. And the single biggest tragedy for the Finney family was when my oldest brother, Billy, was killed in a farming accident. He was 12 years old at the time, and my dad never forgave himself for that. And that led to tragedy number 2, watching my dad drink himself to death. And it took him 11 years to do that. And that was like watching a slow motion train wreck. It was like participating in a slow motion train wreck. And you're in the middle of it. And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. So let me set up the timeline for you. My brother died when he was 12. I was 6 years old at the time. It took my dad 11 years to drink himself to death. So by the time he was in the hospital on his deathbed, I was 17 years old. And of course, I was the oldest son at home at that time. And of course, being 17, I felt completely responsible, like I should have been able to do something about it. But, you know, in hindsight, really, I don't think there was anything anyone could have done. The death certificate says alcoholic jaundice, but what I really think he died from was a broken heart. And my poor dear mother, I mean, she just couldn't cope. She was not a strong woman. She was drinking herself, you know, she was drinking all the time. And she was in and out of the local mental hospital. So what was she going to do? And so that was my home life when I was growing up. And, you know, they don't call them broken homes anymore, but they did back then. And to me, that's just such a good description. A broken home producing little broken kids like me, like little Allan. And when I say broken, let me explain that. When my brother died, I was just going into grade 1, and it was like I went to sleep in grade 1 and I woke up in grade 4. And that's how I'd usually describe that. But I just recently found out what they call that. It's called dissociative disorder. You just dissociate. Off you go. See you later. And where I went, I couldn't tell you. But I think I saw that place where you go in an ayahuasca ceremony once, you know, which is another story altogether. Anyway, this used to be called multiple personality disorder because when it's severe, there can be distinct personalities that all inhabit the same body. But, you know, now they call it dissociative disorder because just like anything else, it's a spectrum from very mild to very severe. And, you know, whatever you want to call it, I'm missing those 3 years. But that was just the start of a lifetime of dissociation, which, like I say, I've just figured this out recently. Because it's like anything. It just doesn't go away by itself. Same with depression or PTSD or anger or shame or guilt or addictions or anything else like that. And all of that was mixed in there for me. But if you want to get rid of something like that, you actually have to do something about it. If you want to stop drinking, you have to stop drinking. So anyway, by the time my dad's at home drinking himself to death and I'm out drinking and drugging myself, and I was like, peddling drugs and getting high, and I was sexually promiscuous, and that was me as a teenager. What a thing to have, your girl at home and somebody like me phone up, hey, you want to go out? I started drinking when I was 14, even though I said I'd never touch alcohol. So, never say never. And that was my foundation, the formative years. And as it turned out, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. So my drinking career lasted until I was 29 when I finally quit. And my ex-wife asked me, why are you quitting drinking? And I was like, honey, I don't know. I'm going to die if I keep doing this. So anyway, I thought that after I quit drinking, that would be the end of it. My life would be good now. No. All the problems I thought I drank away were just waiting in the alley so they could mug me. Surprise, surprise. And just let me see if I can give you an idea what dissociative disorder is like, because it sounds so clinical. Let's say you and I were talking just like this. I mean, if this was a two-way conversation, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. And the next thing I know, I'm like somewhere else, maybe talking to somebody else or at home or wherever. And I have no idea how I got there or what happened in between, because the last thing I remember was talking to you. And that'll mess with your head. Or let's say I'm at a business meeting one day and I see you on the street, and we meet, I see you on the street the next day, I might not even recognize you, which sounds just utterly bizarre. But that's what would happen. It's just a big blank. But if I met you somewhere else, I might not know you. The upshot of all this is you learn to avoid situations. You don't socialize, you isolate yourself, which, alcoholics do anyway. It's like I was constantly being abducted by aliens, and I had all this missing time. And it's not like I wasn't trying to do something about it. I've been to alcoholism counselors, AA, marriage counselors. I single-handedly kept the self-help industry alive. I was on a mission my whole life. I even tried pharmaceuticals, and that didn't work either. None of it, nothing, no relief in sight. It's a life sentence. And in all fairness to the people that I saw about this, apparently dissociative disorder is quite rare. It's not an easy thing to diagnose or even understand. Anyway, then my kids came along. Twins, a boy and a girl. And oh my God, they're so beautiful. And all these fatherhood issues that were just sitting on the back burner just came boiling right back up to the surface. And after that, it was like I was constantly like fading in and out of my own family life. And that was hard, missing that time with my kids. And the best way I have of explaining it is this movie with Adam Sandler. It's called Click. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he has this magic remote control, and he can fast forward through things in his life that he thinks are boring. And then at the end of the movie, he realized that he's missed all the important stuff. And that's what it was like for me. But the big difference for me was that I didn't have the remote. Somebody else did. And, my kids love me and I love them, but I just wish I could have been there for it. I'd give anything to have that time back now. You know, if I knew then what I know now. So anyway, that's about as much as I'm going to say about that. By the time I'm 59 years old, I'm going through my second divorce. Surprise, surprise. But my daughter and I had heard about something called ayahuasca. And whenever I heard that name, for whatever reason, I just knew I was going to do it. And apparently, you know, this happens quite a bit. You hear that, ayahuasca, and you just say, yeah, I'm going to do that. So that's what happened to me. So my daughter and I went down to Peru together, and if you can do ayahuasca with a family member, I just recommend it. Ayahuasca just knocks down walls that you don't even know are there. And if you do it with a loved one, you will have a completely different relationship than you did before. And it's just so beautiful to be able to do that. Anyway, so let me tell you about the ayahuasca ceremonies. And even in some of my ayahuasca ceremonies, the dissociative disorder would kick in. I mean, I'd go away and whoever else would just come along and show up for a while. And I know this for a fact because I used to record my ceremonies because I really like to listen to the Icaros. These are the songs that the shamans sing, and they're just so beautiful. And so I'd be listening to my recordings, and I would hear myself saying stuff like, and nothing, nothing crazy or anything, but it was like, wow, this is so beautiful, and oh my God, this is so amazing. Like somebody had just, zapped in and was looking around, or something. It's hard to explain. But anyway, I don't remember saying that stuff. And people would come up after the ceremony and say, Allan, you were so noisy. But until I listened to the recordings, I really didn't believe I was saying anything. I actually thought I was just having my own quiet little ceremony by myself. No. But eventually ayahuasca leads you to the place where you can figure it out for yourself. And that's where the healing is, the self-awareness. You get to recognize yourself for who you are, how you were built as a human being. And then she just asked you, you want some help with that? And for me, it was like, yes. And so we just went and picked up all those shattered little pieces of my life and we put them back together. And that was just so amazing. So, to be present in your own life is just such a gift. And that's the ayahuasca healing. But there's more to ayahuasca than just healing. There's the knowledge, that part, the knowledge part of the ceremony, and the laughter and the joy, and you get your joy of life back. Because you get to feel that joy again, just like when you were a little kid and that joy was there. And you get shown how this world works, how people really are. You get to see, let's call it the reality of things, why you're actually here in this lifetime right now. And that will change your life right there. Excuse me. Whew. I'll talk to people who have experience with ayahuasca, and we will have the most amazing conversations. And I never thought I'd get to experience anything like this in my life. If you're missing the beauty of this world, an ayahuasca ceremony will show you just how truly beautiful this world is. And anybody can do this. You just drink a little cup of tea, and that's it. Your world changes. How utterly, incredibly spectacular is that? Who'd have thought? Anyway, here's something that I was thinking about the other day, and I'll see if I can get through this because I don't know, I might get a little emotional. But just to finish this story with my dad, we finally got my dad into a hospital, and there was a bunch of us family members standing around his bed, and he was just like comatose and just swollen up and yellow with jaundice. And all of a sudden, he just, he looks straight at me and he says, "Allan, get my boots. We're getting out of here." And if he was here right now, you know what I'd tell him? Besides that I love him? I'd tell him, "Hey, Dad, I found your boots. Let's get out of here. Let's get the hell out of here." And that's ayahuasca. And so thank you, plant medicines. And I'm Allan Finney. And this is what ayahuasca told me to tell you.